Welcome to the Brandwise podcast, where we talk about the big branding moves that business owners are making and the why behind it. I'm your host, Jess Freeman, here to help you be wise and be bold. Today on the podcast, I'm talking with Sherrell T. Martin, and she is the founder, CEO, and tech-savvy cloud accountant at Nitram Financial Solutions, an award-winning financial management and education consulting company. I think today's episode is a really good reminder about the importance of our brand name, and also that rebranding and repositioning can happen at totally different times. It doesn't have to be all at once. And if you're not sure what your next step should be for your own brand, I want you to hop down to the show notes to take my quiz to see if you are a squiggle or a square and what that even means. But without further ado, let's get into the conversation with Sherrell. Thanks so much for being here, Sherrell. I'm so excited to talk to you today. So to kick us off, tell us what your brand is all about.
So my brand is all about financial solutions. And so my practice, Nitram Financial Solutions, we do outsourced accounting and bookkeeping support for business owners. So providing them the solutions of they can outsource their bookkeeping. We help them with all the technology and the workflows and so forth. But then we're also rebranding, or I guess repositioning ourselves to also provide education and training in the same space. And so that the market for that is a different market than the business owners. But so we're all about financial solutions. I believe that, we're a lot of business owners and people who are out here doing things and getting false information from social media and all the places. And so we want to provide education that is accurate for people that can also allow them to create wealth and legacy in their life.
Yes, please keep us informed. I feel like sometimes there are people out there sharing information that should not be sharing said information on bookkeeping and taxes and all that kind of stuff. And
they're just sharing false information. It's sad because a lot of people listen to that and they fall into that. And then later down the line, when we're out here trying to fix it, they're like, why did you do that? And you're like, well, somebody on social media said, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So let's talk about the rebrand. Tell us about the old brand and what made you decide to change.
Actually, the original rebrand that I did, I started my business in 2012, and I started out, our company was called Empower to Thrive. And it was still the same services we provided, but the logo was red. It had a butterfly because I love butterflies and red is my favorite color. It was but because of the Thrive, it was about transformation and all of that. And I had a client early on and he was like, your name doesn't say to me that you do finances. If we were not in a networking group together, I would have had no idea. I would have never reached out to you. And so it was kind of that light bulb moment where it was like, because at the time I had just quit my full-time job, but I only had like 2 or 3 clients, and it was like kind of hard getting new business. And it was like, okay, so that doesn't resonate with anybody. So around 2016, I think it was, we rebranded as Nitram Financial Solutions, which obviously has finance in the name. Solutions, Nitram is my last name backwards. So it kind of made sense. And so now we've been doing that bookkeeping support for 11, 12 years now. What year is this? 2024? Yeah. It'll be 12 years in October. And so I'm repositioning because now I want to offer these training and courses and workshops to appeal to a new audience. And so we're just kind of repositioning what we do in our messaging.
Nice. I like this because, like I've said in other episodes, like rebranding and repositioning doesn't always have to happen at one time.
Mm-hmm.
It can happen years apart.
Yeah.
Just as your business evolves. But first of all, I didn't even put 2 and 2 together until you said that Nitram was your name backwards. And I was like, what? And I literally looked at the screen and I was like, Okay, yeah, yeah, it's Nitram.
I thought more people would get it because usually when I see stuff like that, people get it so quickly, but I don't. And
Mm,
so I got the idea. It was a couple of people I knew early on in my career. One of them was an accountant and one of them was a graphic designer, and their business name was their first name backwards. And so when I decided I wanted to change the name, I was like trying all the things, my name backwards, my husband's name mixed with my name, kids' names, everything. And my daughter was 9 at the time. We had a whole sheet of paper full of stuff and nothing just made sense because it was like, like it just did not make any type of sense at all. And then, so the only thing I could think was, I was like, well, let's start last names. And so we did our last name backwards. And I was like, huh, it kind of gives me a sense of nitro, even though it's
mhm.
not nitrum. So, of course, we had to come up with how I would want it to be pronounced and so forth. But it was kind of, it's a nice memory to have that my daughter helped me create it.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
because I never wanted to be like Martin and Associates or something like that, Martin and Company, which is a typical accounting name, accounting business name. I wanted to be something a little bit different. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Martin and Associates immediately makes me think of those, like, lawyers who deal with trucks, like, semi-truck accidents or something.
Oh,
Like, you
right.
said that I don't know why, like, but for some reason, as soon as you said Martin and Associates, I was like, the lawyer. Like, I
It's
can,
like
like
the
I
dun
picture
dun
some bald
dun
yeah, like, I picture some bald man on a billboard being like, "Martin and Associates."
with his blue suit
Um
and his white shirt.
Yes.
Yep.
But I think this, honestly, I feel like this was a great change. I wasn't even a part of it. But I'm like, I I love that you made that shift because I think often business owners try to come up with some kind of like the empower to thrive. Like we want like a catchy name, we want something fun. And like I think we can still do that, but I do think it has to make sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, with kind of changing the name, getting rid of the butterfly, was that was that or any other part of the rebrand process hard to, like was it hard to leave that behind when you made that change?
It was a little bit, it was hard to let go the design of the logo because I loved it. Like, I
Mm,
absolutely loved it, but it just didn't make like you said, it just didn't make sense anymore. So it was a little bit hard to transition, but, like, immediately, I started getting more clients, like, immediately. As soon as the name changed, I did kind of a soft, if you will, push out on social media that our name has changed and so forth. And like immediately we started getting more business and more clients. So it was definitely the crux and why I wasn't growing. It just took someone telling me that for me to realize, like, because a lot of times we come up with these names, like you said, we're trying to be creative, and we're like, "Oh my god, I love it so much," and it's like, but the people you're talking to would never say, I wanna
mhm,
be empowered to thrive. They might
right.
say they want a thriving business or they might use it casually in conversation, but when they're looking for what you do, when they're looking for their service, they are not putting that into the search bar.
Right. Yeah. And when you say empower to thrive, I think of either like a marriage counselor or like a marriage counseling retreat or something, or I think of like health coaching or something.
Oh, I've
Like,
heard coaching, but never specifically those particular
yeah, those are like
industries.
the 2 things that initially came up in my mind. I'm curious when you got that feedback from those, about like, "This doesn't really talk about, like, I I don't get the finances from this." Did you go to anybody else?
I wanna say that I asked at least 1 or 2 other people, but I literally don't remember it. Like, when he said it, it just stood out so strongly. He was, like, the 2nd client that I had had. He was my largest client at the time. And we were actually, like, good friends because we were in a BNI together, so it like, I valued what he said, and he had been in business for, like, years, and so I kinda valued what he said, but like, when as soon as he said it, it, like, made so much sense.
To be clear, I wasn't, like, saying you needed to go get other feedback. I was just curious because I do think sometimes I think that could be beneficial. It's like a fine balance between there's too many cooks in the kitchen and you're trying to ask too many people about like, what should I name this? Whether it's a business or a program within your business. And soon you get too many ideas and this person says it's great and this person says it's not.
A very fine line, because you don't want to ask people who aren't business owners, who
Right.
don't know what you're trying to do, who have no idea about anything, and then they're just giving you their opinion versus like honest, good feedback. So
Mhm.
I totally agree. Like some feedback is good, but you got to ask the right people.
Yes, and that is very important. I often see people asking for feedback on like their logos or their websites and Facebook groups.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
I'm like, okay, be careful. Like, who are we talking to? It can be dangerous. When you start getting logo feedback and like you have 500, 5,000 people willing to comment on this post, like it could be really overwhelming and they might not be your target clients.
I was
And
gonna
so,
say, and 5,000 people who are not the people that you're
yeah,
selling to, and so their opinion really, whether it resonates with them or not, doesn't really matter because that's not who you're talking to.
it's tricky. It's tricky. Were there any unexpected like challenges or oh crap moments either during the rebrand or after the rebrand when you're like, "Oh, should I not have done this?"
I would say the biggest challenge was probably like you have to change all the things
Mm,
everywhere. And there were a couple of things specifically like I have government certifications for the
mhm,
business. Well, even to this day, those certifications still say the old name because no matter how many times I send a letter, an email, a phone call to say, like we legally changed the name. Like I'm in Maryland, so I went on the state of Maryland, actually did a change, and I did all the paperwork to legally change the name. I went to the IRS. I got everything is changed where it needs to be,
mhm,
except there. I didn't think about the social media. So I had like 6 pages of everything because I had 3 of this name and then 3 of that name,
mm.
and so those were the things that were kinda like the most overwhelming. I didn't regret anything. I do believe it was a really good change. I've had people tell me, that I should have changed the color. I don't think people really pay that much attention to the colors and stuff when they trying to decide if they buy.
Yeah, obviously as a designer, I know a lot about the psychology of
Mhm,
colors.
mhm.
And there is some of that that's, like, out there. I don't always think it's as strong in different situations. I think it's really important for us as business owners that we feel good about our brand.
Mm,
I don't know how many people I have talked to over the last 13 years that they're like, "Oh, well, I feel like these colors and these fonts in my brand don't fit me, and so I'm less likely to put it out there just because it's a shade of green I don't like and it doesn't feel like me. But I like that you stayed true to yourself because I think that is a really important piece of being a business owner that we need to feel good about our brand and feel confident in it. So
thank you.
I'm glad you stuck with it and you were like, "No, I'm staying here."
And even if I changed the colors, I wouldn't have changed it to blue or green. I would have
Mm,
picked like some magenta or a purple or because
yeah.
I like bright colors in
Mhm.
general. I like anything that's colorful. And so I have a whole Pinterest board just called I Love Colors. And so anything that looks appealing to me from a bright color perspective, I pin it. And so I still wouldn't have picked blue or green if I did pick something else. It would
Yeah.
just would have been some other variation or some other color that they wouldn't have liked either.
Yeah. So you've mentioned this a little bit, but how has the rebrand impacted your business?
So like I said, the initial rebrand, I got business immediately. Like I started getting consistent leads from all the places. I was doing a lot more networking, meeting a lot more people. So instantly I grew. I had been in business, I don't know, I should know these numbers, but I don't. Maybe 4 or 5 years.
Mm,
But I still was struggling to like cross over the $100,000 mark, and as soon as I changed the name, it happened. So it was almost like it was supposed to happen. Um, the the repositioning that I'm doing now, I'm still in the process of it, so I don't think it's had a direct impact yet. But I do believe that there will be one. I
Mhm.
think
Yeah.
it's, you know, starting initially it was about being a business owner and owning that. And now this repositioning is putting me more into more like a CEO leadership space, as more of a thought leader within this space. And so I think that's the impact that it will actually
Mm.
have.
Yeah, and I like that repositioning. How do you feel like you've evolved personally as a business owner during the rebrand and then also, I mean, you kind of mentioned it just now, but also during this repositioning?
Definitely more confidence. Just like any person who starts to, well, most people, I'm not gonna say any, because there are some people who are confident from day one, but it gave me more confidence in selling and charging the prices that I wanted to charge, because I knew, like, it stood out that this is what we're here for. This is what we're talking about. So it made that process a lot easier. And as I'm shifting more into this CEO, more of a CEO and less of a entrepreneur mindset, it's
Uh-huh.
it's just increasing that confidence, right? It's making me, I'm looking at things differently. Before it was kind of like we're just doing things and trying to grow and just to be growing. And now I'm really intentional about what I'm doing, which is why it's taking a little longer than I want it to be.
I think anytime we reposition, there's a lot of thinking that goes into really like who are we talking to? What do we want our brand to be perceived as? Like, I feel like sometimes when we start as business owners, we're like, yeah, this is who I'm talking to, this is what I'm doing.
Mhm.
But then when we start to reposition and move into that CEO level, there's a deeper thinking process almost. Like, not to say that we're just cavalier when we're before that, like we're just no
But we are
strategy, but
sometimes, right? Like, sometimes some people are in the beginning, and I was like, "Yeah, we're gonna support everybody and anybody." And then there did come a point where I did hone in that marketing messaging around specific people, but the people for the new version is totally different. They're not even business owners per se. So it definitely takes some strategic thinking around it, because it's a totally different new audience and a
Mhm.
totally different perspective. So, but I do think in the beginning, a lot of us were, because we're just trying to make a buck.
Mhm.
we're just trying to
Yes.
we're just trying to get the ball rolling and get it moving, and so we're less likely to be as specific and intentional as we should be at that level.
Yes. I think it just comes, like you said, it comes with growth and our brands evolve. So anybody listening, I don't want you to feel like, oh my gosh, like I need to start thinking. Like, I think it happens when it needs to happen.
Mhm.
And I don't feel like you can force your brand to evolve. Like, yes, you can say, okay, I want to take my business to this place. I want to
Mhm.
start catering to these people and those kinds of things. But I feel like sometimes it just like there's an inner transformation that has to happen as like a person and as your business owner before you're really ready to go to that
Yeah.
next level in your business.
Yeah. And I think
Mhm.
you'll know when it's time. You'll get to a point where you realize something is different, something has changed, something has shifted. Maybe something took off that you didn't expect. And it's like, oh, well, this is the thing we should be focusing on. But I think people will recognize, like the listeners, you'll recognize when it's time to start thinking about some type of rebranding or
Mhm.
repositioning, whichever case it may be. And then go with it at that point.
Mhm. Yep. Okay, so last question for the people out there listening who are like, maybe I need to rebrand or reposition, or like, I don't know. What advice do you have for them?
The first thing I would say is, like, really sit down and evaluate the goal that you're trying to achieve, to see if that makes sense. If you do need to, first, to determine if you need to rebrand or reposition, and then if that would get you there, then do it. Like, don't.
Mm,
I have sat on this for 4 years now. It's like, it's just, for 2 years, I sat on it for 2 years. It just was just mulling over it. And so I would say, if you have the thought and the idea, start, evaluating things now to see if that's what you want to do, so that you can do it sooner and faster versus sitting on it for a couple years, letting time just pass you by. So I would say, just actually do it and go forward with it. I don't know that it could be bad. Like if you do the work and set the intentions and, it checks all the boxes, it's going to get you to your goal. How can it be bad?
I just recorded another episode talking about that very thing, and it's called omission bias.
Ooh.
And it's our brain tricking us thinking that it's better to not do anything rather than to take a risk because, well, what if it fails? And it's like that thinking of like, well, if it's not broke, don't fix it,
Yeah.
don't fix it. There's nothing to fix. And so it's easy to be like, oh, well, maybe it's safer to stay here than rather like take the leap to change and rebrand or reposition. But then you also have to think about like, well, what opportunities are you missing out on?
Yes, that part.
So I literally just recorded that earlier today. So we are on the same wavelength. Well, this has been really fun. Where can we connect with you online?
So I probably spend most of my time on Instagram, which my handle is just Sherrell T Martin. That's where I play with the most. I do play on Twitter a little bit and LinkedIn, but wherever you look, it's going to be Sherrell T Martin. Have to have.
Awesome. I will link to that in the show notes so you all can go follow Sherrell and connect with her. But thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
If today's branding story inspired you and you're ready to start your own rebrand adventure, head over to justcreatives.com/rebrand to explore how we can work together on your brand. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to leave a review or share it on Instagram and tune in next week for another episode.